It was a calm morning in Terran Prime, the capital of the Humanity Federation. Towering skyscrapers reached into the sky, and air vehicles quietly glided over the streets below. However, this peace was soon shattered by an urgent signal received at the Federation Central Intelligence Unit. The signal came from Xavius, an alien empire. The message declared that they had entered a deadly technology race, part of their plan to conquer the galaxy. This race was not just scientific, but military as well. The Empire aimed to create a devastating weapon with the power to subjugate the entire galaxy, should they develop it first. Tarin, the experienced leader of the Central Intelligence Unit, examined the signal carefully. "This is a threat to humanity's existence," said Tarin, his eyes focused on the text on the screen. "If we don't enter this race and stop them, we'll all be wiped out." Recognizing the gravity of the situation, he immediately informed the Federation Command. The command quickly convened to discuss this deadly race. The room was filled with powerful leaders, military strategists, and scientists. Leading the meeting was Commander Alaric, a man with hardened features and battle-worn eyes. The other members of the Federation Council looked concerned. Alaric summarized the situation bluntly. "The Xavius Empire has started a technology race to conquer the galaxy. If they win, all civilizations, including humanity, will be under threat." A young and brilliant engineer named Blake spoke up. "Our only option is to beat them," he said calmly. "We must move faster than them, seize their technology, and build something even better." A heavy silence fell over the room. Alaric frowned, knowing Blake's plan was risky. But there was no other choice. "We know the risks," said Alaric in a firm tone. "But for the survival of the Federation, we must enter this race. This is war, and we will win." The decision was made to act immediately. Blake and Alaric gathered the Federation's best scientists and strategists. The mission was clear: enter the race and surpass Xavius. To do this, they needed to launch a covert operation to infiltrate Xavius's largest research base. This base was where deadly technologies were being developed, and the future of the Federation depended on the success of this mission. Preparations for the mission began quickly. Alaric and Blake were meticulous in selecting the crew. Soldiers capable of staying calm in the heat of battle, engineers with strategic minds, and experts in stealth were all chosen. While Alaric perfected military tactics, Blake prepared the advanced technology the team would need. Their ship was equipped to handle any attack or defense scenario. Before the mission started, Alaric gathered the crew in the training field. The team practiced in various simulations, focusing on battle scenarios. While Alaric sharpened their combat skills, Blake worked to enhance their engineering capabilities. Alaric addressed the crew. "This is not just a reconnaissance mission. This is war. Each of your lives depends on one another. Every mistake here will have irreversible consequences." Alaric's tough but motivating speech left a lasting impact on the team. Both mentally and physically, they were ready for battle. The first clash erupted when the Federation ship was detected by a Xavius patrol vessel. The massive Xavius ship began closing in on them. Alaric quickly gave orders. "Shields up! Prepare for combat!" he commanded, and the ship was immediately battle-ready. The Xavius ship fired its laser cannons, and enormous waves of energy exploded around the Federation ship. The shields trembled under the impact, struggling to hold. Alaric executed a tactical maneuver to get the ship out of enemy fire. "Turn the ship 30 degrees left. We'll hit their weak spot," he said decisively. The crew swiftly carried out the command. During the battle, Blake monitored the ship's systems. "Shields down to 50%, he warned. Alaric knew the time had come. "Now!" he shouted as the ship's laser cannons targeted the vulnerable section of the enemy vessel. When the Federation ship's lasers fired, the enemy's shields flickered and, with a massive explosion, the Xavius ship was blown to pieces. The Federation crew breathed a sigh of relief, but this was only the beginning. Xavius had much more powerful forces and technology, and the race had just begun. After this first encounter, Alaric and Blake decided to proceed strategically. The road to Xavius's central base would be treacherous, but both strategy and courage were essential to succeed. As the Federation ship approached the borders of Xavius, the tension among the crew heightened. The mission was dangerous. Xavius, the most ruthless empire in the galaxy, had taken an unforgiving stance in this technology race. Everyone on board knew that one mistake would mean no return. Alaric sat in the ship's command center, staring out at the massive planets drifting by, lost in thought. "This could be our last chance for humanity," he muttered to himself. Blake, performing the final checks on the ship's systems, was deep in thought as well. Xavius's technology was far more complex than he had anticipated. Some of the engineers on board were worried they wouldn't be able to handle what they were about to face. Logan, visibly anxious, turned to Blake. "At this pace, we'll never get ahead of them," he said, his voice full of concern. Blake looked at him calmly. "We'll succeed. This is the greatest challenge humanity has ever faced. Everyone must push their abilities to the limit." As they neared their target, the infiltration plan was reviewed one last time. The massive Xavius research base hovered in orbit around an unknown planet. This base was the heart of the race, where new technologies were developed and galaxy-destroying weapons were designed. Infiltrating it would be a turning point for the Federation in this deadly competition. Alaric gathered the team. "This mission won't be easy. We're deep in enemy territory, and one mistake will cost us everything," he said firmly. "But we're human. We'll win with our intelligence and courage." The Federation ship managed to silently position itself in orbit around the base. Given Xavius's advanced radar and detection systems, this was no small feat. Blake minimized the ship's energy emissions to avoid detection. "Stay quiet, or they'll notice us," he warned. As the ship glided toward the dark side of the base, the crew held their breath. A small landing craft detached from the main ship and discreetly approached the base. Blake, Alaric, and the crew successfully infiltrated the base. However, as they advanced deeper inside, they felt the increasing difficulty of each step. The interior was dark and cold. Massive energy cables running along the walls reminded them at every turn of Xavius's technological superiority. The team carefully moved forward, avoiding detection by signal jammers and enemy sensors. But the infiltration didn't last long. As they ventured deeper into the base, a high-pitched alarm suddenly rang out. Xavius soldiers had detected the Federation team's presence. Alaric gave a quick command. "Take defensive positions. We're about to engage." Xavius soldiers suddenly emerged from the dark corridors. Clad in dazzling armor and armed with laser rifles, they launched a relentless attack on the Federation team. The shrill sound of energy weapons echoed off the metal walls as the Federation soldiers quickly took cover. Blake, pressed against a wall, readied his engineering equipment while Alaric moved to the front, commanding his soldiers. "They're coming from the left. Fire!" Alaric shouted, firing his laser gun and taking down a Xavius soldier. The battle intensified. Laser beams illuminated the corridor, and explosions reverberated through the structure. The Xavius soldiers, with their advanced technology, moved swiftly, but the Federation soldiers' intelligence and training allowed them to hold their ground. Blake began to use his technological skills to assist his team. He activated an energy disruptor, temporarily disabling the enemy's weapons. "Now, we can take them down," he shouted. The Federation soldiers seized the opportunity, launching a counterattack. Several Xavius soldiers fell, but the enemy kept sending reinforcements. Alaric was in the thick of the fight. "Fall back. Let's make it look like we're trapped," he ordered strategically. As the soldiers retreated, they lured the enemy into a narrow passage. Alaric's maneuver allowed the Federation forces to encircle the Xavius troops. "Now fire!" he commanded, and the Federation soldiers fired in unison, neutralizing the enemy. The barrage of laser fire in the passage forced the remaining Xavius soldiers to retreat. Once the battle ended, the Federation team quickly resumed their advance through the base. Both Alaric and Blake were acutely aware of the ticking clock. Every second counted in this race, and they had to make the right decisions. As they descended deeper into the base, signs of advanced technological developments were everywhere. Energy currents ran along the walls, leading to rooms filled with machinery and massive power sources unlike anything the Federation had seen before. Blake paused briefly to examine the enemy's technology, but Alaric urged him on each time. "Time's running out, Blake. We need to finish this." At last, they reached the heart of the base, the largest laboratory where the most dangerous experiments were taking place. As Alaric and Blake reached the entrance of Xavius' massive science laboratory, they took a deep breath. The door before them was the gateway to a battle that would determine the fate of humanity. Behind that door, Dr. Voron, one of the brightest minds of the Xavius Empire, was in the final stages of developing the technology that could end the race. If he succeeded, humanity and the entire galaxy could be enslaved. Blake quickly prepared his devices. "We need to open this door, but it's protected by a heavy security system," he said, focusing on his equipment. Alaric gripped his weapon, scanning the surroundings. "I'm not sure the enemy isn't expecting us. Stay alert." Blake's quick hands worked on the security system while the rest of the team waited on edge. After a few minutes, the lock was broken, and the heavy metal door slowly opened. Inside, the laboratory was filled with technological marvels. Energy currents and massive computers gleamed in every corner. At the center of the room, Dr. Voron worked, dressed in a white lab coat. Just behind him was a colossal energy weapon, capable of destroying entire galaxies. Alaric aimed at Voron. "Hands up, Voron. This ends now," he shouted. Voron turned around calmly, casting a cold glance at Alaric. "How brave of you, Alaric," he said with a mocking tone. "But you're too late. You can't stop this technology." Before Voron had finished speaking, dozens of Xavius soldiers suddenly appeared from various points in the room. All had their weapons aimed at the Federation team. Alaric immediately took a combat stance. "Take defensive positions," he commanded. Weapons fired, and the laboratory turned into a battlefield. In the initial clash, Federation soldiers took cover and returned fire. Xavius soldiers had positioned themselves perfectly, using the technological devices in the laboratory. Laser beams echoed off the walls, creating a chaotic atmosphere. As Blake fired his weapon, he also kept an eye on the laboratory's technology. "We don't have much time to stop this weapon," he shouted. Alaric demonstrated his sniper skills, taking down Xavius soldiers one by one. "Try to push them back," he yelled. But the Xavius soldiers were relentless. Their advanced armor and weapons made them tougher and deadlier. Alaric briefly stepped out from cover and aimed at a Xavius soldier directly in front of him. When his laser gun fired, the soldier fell, but more were coming. Inside the laboratory, Federation soldiers tried to push the enemy back with tactical maneuvers. Blake darted around, dodging enemy fire, while working to disable the lab's energy systems. "If we can shut down this system, we can weaken the weapon's power," he said, rapidly pressing buttons on a control panel. But Voron's control was tighter than expected. Xavia's soldiers responded flawlessly to every move the Federation team made. When Blake reached an energy panel in the corner of the lab, he realized Voron's plan. This device powers the entire weapon. If we shut this down, we can stop everything, he shouted. Just then, Voron aimed his laser gun at Blake. As Voron was about to fire, Alaric quickly stepped in front of Blake and shot Voron, stopping him. Voron's gun fell from his hand as a blast echoed through the room, causing the lab's devices to shudder. Alaric was injured, but he got up and kept fighting. "This isn't over," he said with determination. Voron, now on the ground, refused to give up. "I was so close to winning," he snarled. Alaric approached him. "Humanity will never be your slave," he said coldly, aiming his gun once more. At the same time, Blake made a final move, completely shutting down the energy panel. An alarm sounded throughout the lab, signaling the system's shutdown. But the Xavia soldiers didn't surrender. With Voron incapacitated, they were even more enraged. Federation soldiers, now under heavy fire, tried to retreat. Alaric, holding his bleeding arm, gave the command, "We're pulling out. We've done our job. Now we need to get out." Under intense fire, the Federation team began retreating from the laboratory. Blake made one last adjustment to the computer systems, triggering the lab's self-destruction. "This place will blow in 5 minutes," he said, out of breath. The team sprinted through narrow corridors, heading back to their landing craft as the sound of exploding devices echoed behind them. Xavia's soldiers were still in pursuit, but the Federation crew managed to reach the ship. Alaric, injured, climbed aboard while Blake made a final move to pilot the craft away from the station. As the landing craft sped away, the entire laboratory exploded in a massive blast. The sound reverberated through the void of space as the Federation team let out a collective sigh of relief. Blake, wiping sweat from his forehead, took control of the landing craft and headed back to the Federation ship. "We did it," he said quietly. As the ship sailed back toward the safety of Federation space, Alaric and Blake exchanged a glance. "This isn't just a victory," Alaric said. "This was a fight for the future of humanity." Blake nodded, looking back at Alaric. "We've won the race, but this war isn't over. Xavius will return." Alaric gazed into the distance, deep in thought. This victory was a beacon of hope for humanity, but they knew the war to protect the galaxy was far from over. The Xavius Empire was strong, but humanity, with its intelligence and courage, would continue to stand against this dark force. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.